Hey, how you doing? This is RJ. So today I want to bring my channel back to its origins, talking about the virtuous hero, a traditional virtuous hero. And I want to do that this week because I've been thinking a lot about the virtue of fortitude, sometimes commonly just referred to as courage, about how that virtue of fortitude plays into your traditional virtuous hero on the page, and of how so many modern stories, and I would dare even say modern man, miss the mark of being heroic because they simply do not understand the structure of fortitude. But before we get there, I just want to remind everyone there are links in the description and the pinned comment for my graphic novels based around the idea of the traditional virtuous hero. There are the 2 completed superhero graphic novels, which you can order right away. There is the order page for my low fantasy graphic novel, Crom the Destroyer, which is still in production. And there is also a sign-up page for the next book that we are coming out with, which is Fade to Blue. If you want to go there and leave your email address, you can be informed when the project goes live. It is basically an Indiana Jones type story in a film noir set world. And you're looking at some of the beautiful art from all of those graphic novels in the background. So if any of that sounds appealing to you at all, click on one of those links in the description and go on over and see if my graphic novels are for you. So in getting back to our topic and talking about fortitude, let's not beat around the bush. What is the essence of fortitude? Why don't people today understand it, especially your quote-unquote progressive woke people and their stories? Well, it's because fortitude is based around the idea of death. Expanding that, it is around the idea of suffering and death, and expanding that further, it is around the idea that we live in a world of death and suffering, and you can't get around it. You're going to have to endure it. And the problem with modern man, and certainly your progressive ideology, is that we have convinced ourselves that we can build ourselves a utopia wherein pain and suffering, and maybe even death, no longer reign. So the quote-unquote progressive ideology, which is underlaid throughout so much of our society, derives its motivation from let's do this in order to try and build that society wherein there will be no more pain anymore. That, in their minds, is a noble goal. Whereas the traditional way of looking at, well, reality, really, is that we live in a world of pain and suffering, and you're just going to have to deal with it. There's no getting rid of it. You have to find a way to deal with it. And how do you deal with it? You deal with it through fortitude. There's a line from one of the great thinkers of Western society, Augustine of Hippo. He's one of the pillars of our intellectual tradition, saying, "To be free from pain while we are in this place of misery is only purchased by the dulling of your senses." Now that may sound like a very pessimistic and downer way to think about reality, but he's basically saying, yes, we live in a place where suffering exists. It is a place of suffering. We struggle to survive at every moment. But if you try to get rid of that pain, that struggle, you're also going to get rid of all of the rest of your ability, your emotions, to enjoy what is there as well. You will deaden your senses, not just to the pain, but also to the joy of that existence. And that's, I think, at the heart of why our society is so nihilistic, why it is lacking in joy, and why it seems so pessimistic so much of the time. It's because being run through with the progressive ideological stance, the idea that we need to seek at every turn motivations for our actions that will lead to the building of a utopia where there is no longer pain and suffering, is a path that leads to the deadening of our senses and the inability to feel joy in cutting ourselves off from the pain which is necessary within our existence. So to put it another way, there is a reason why we have triumphant heroes. There's a reason why heroic stories, true heroic stories, are beacons of hope, and there is a reason why those kinds of stories stand the test of time, so much so that we're still reciting ones that were created 3,000 years ago. But let's take a step back for a second and look at fortitude itself. What is its form? Where does it come from? What does it lead to? And as I describe that, I want you to think about one specific hero from one specific property, and that would be Frodo Baggins. Think about Frodo Baggins as I describe this, and I'll come back to him at the end. Well, the thing is that, first of all, you cannot look at fortitude in a vacuum. You can't look at it in itself and rely solely on it to describe to you how it functions, because it is part of 4 virtues, which are in a very specific order and number, And they are the heroic virtues that I'm always talking about. They are prudence, justice, fortitude, and temperance. And think about those virtues as concentric circles. The biggest circle is prudence. Within it lies the circle of justice. Within the circle of justice lies the circle of fortitude. Within the circle of fortitude lies the circle of temperance. As such, fortitude cannot exist without prudence, first of all, and then justice. Why is that? Well, it's because fortitude is the defense of something even to the extent that you are willing to die for it. It's usually expressed as are willing to take wounds or die for it, are willing to suffer pain or die for it. Why? Because wounds and pain are meant to signify death. Each of those wounds, each of those pains could lead to death. Therefore, as a hero, you will take those strikes that are painful, that wound you, not knowing if they'll lead to your death or not. They could, but you will take them. And why? Well, because you're defending something, but not just something. What are you defending? You are defending the truth. And why is it that you're defending the truth? Well, it's because fortitude does not exist without first having justice. Justice does not exist without first having prudence. That is the way these virtues work. They are interlocked with each other. And as I'm always saying, the thing which precedes all of these virtues is right reason. That is to say, your reason in accord with reality. And if we look at reason in the ancient and medieval definition of what reason is, not the modern definition of reason, what is reason? Reason is simply the path you take to find out what is true. And that itself, as described that way, is a good description of prudence. So first you have right reason, your reason in accord with reality. And then you apply that reason in accord with reality to situations in front of you. If you're able to come up with a very good, if not the best, situation wherein you can figure out how to maximize to the best of your ability what you're about to do, that is what prudence is. But again, prudence is according to right reason. Reason is the path to the truth. Therefore, it always goes back to the truth. And then prudence leads into justice. Whereas prudence is the mental calculation of all of these things. Justice is the application of that mental exercise. And as such, justice, of course, again, has reference straight back to the truth. But then what is fortitude? Fortitude is the defense of what is prudent and what is just. It is what stops you from shrinking back and saying, no, I can't put that much effort into it. No, I'm going to abandon the truth. I'm going to abandon justice because it's just too much self-sacrifice. No, fortitude says, I am willing to sacrifice myself. I am willing to endure pain, suffering, even to the extent that those wounds might cause me death at any moment. I am willing to do that to defend what is true. And I know I asked you to think about Frodo Baggins while I talked about all this, but there's another hero that I want you to think about for 1 second. And that hero is Superman. Why? Because what is Superman's tagline? What became Superman's tagline? Well, that would be truth, justice, and the American way. And what is that statement? Well, the statement of truth and justice is simply the statement of prudence and justice. Because prudence is supposed to lead you and be led from the truth itself. Lead you and led from by the path of reason. So truth is simply prudence. And then justice is justice. And the American way is a statement of this is how you're fulfilled. Or in other words, this is how you implement prudence in order to maximize what you're trying to do. But again, it's not just truth, justice, and the American way. Think about that line from Superman the movie. Well, I'm here to defend truth, justice, and the American way. That defense of truth and justice is fortitude. So Superman is the embodiment of fortitude. But even if that is the case, even if he is the embodiment of fortitude, he is lacking somewhat as the true avatar for fortitude. He is lacking to the extent that he is not like Frodo Baggins. Because Frodo Baggins is a full picture of the virtue. Because we only covered 3 so far. The internal form of fortitude is temperance. And what is the structure of temperance? It is the structure of perseverance and of patience. Perseverance simply being the will to endure, but patience in its ancient form, in its old definition, is simply long suffering. That is the actual meaning of what patience is. It is long suffering. And so, if you're someone who has perseverance and patience, you have the will to suffer through a lengthy pain. And while that is only the outer layer of what temperance is, and by the way, temperance is able to do this by drawing its strength once again from the other virtues, by reordering them. But that's just a bit of an aside. The point is, again, that you're able to have fortitude to defend what is true, to defend truth and justice, to the extent that each blow might kill you, because you have the ability to persevere through that suffering, that long suffering. Not just the endurance of wounds right now, but the endurance of what those wounds will mean for you for the rest of your life. And that's where we bring it back to Frodo Baggins. Because at the first of his story, what does Frodo do? He volunteers to do something which he does not know if he will survive. Pure and simple. Being as small and weak as he is, as compared to all of the other characters around him, he is ready to defend what is right, what is true, what is good, by carrying the ring to its place of destruction. He is ready to endure pain. He is ready to endure wounds. He is ready to endure death if he must. And this is symbolized at the very beginning of the journey. The first wound he takes is the wound from the Nazgul. The ring wraiths wound him to the extent that it is a wound that almost kills him. And even when it doesn't kill him, it will never go away. It is a pain that will endure for the rest of his life. That is long suffering. And yet, he continues on. Why? Because he has fortitude. And this, at its heart, is why modern stories fail. Why? Because they're not defending the truth. They're defending my truth. As such, virtue simply becomes virtue signaling. And as such, a story written from such a perspective doesn't want to show you endurance. They substitute outrage for endurance. And they certainly don't want to show you suffering. They substitute spectacle for suffering. Because that's what fortitude becomes in the hands of such people. It simply becomes a moral exhibitionism. When it doesn't have the truth as its backing, that's all it is. When it has my truth as its backing, it's just a spectacle, an exhibition of their own supposed good. So, if I've given you anything new to think about, hit like, hit the shield in the lower right-hand corner of your screen to subscribe, and leave me a comment. Tell me what you think about all this. And don't forget, there are links in the description and the pinned comment for my published graphic novels, for my in-production fantasy graphic novel, and for the sign-up page for my new stories that are coming out called Fade to Blue, a combination of Indiana Jones and film noir. So if any of that looks or sounds appealing to you at all, click on one of those links in the description and go on over and see if one of my graphic novels is for you. All right, I'll leave it there. I'll see you later. Bye.